Good evening, everyone. My name is A.B. Timothy. I am the host of the Keeping the Beacon Lit podcast, which is your entertainment for this evening. Thank you for joining us, and welcome if this is your first time, and welcome back if it's not. The point and goal of this podcast has always been to help young creatives, such as ourselves and those coming up after us, keep the beacon lit, as it were, which is to imply we each have a creative beacon, as it were, in our hearts, and I believe it's the goal of artists to inspire other artists, so that at least it should be. And so that's what I'm trying to do as a debuting artist here shortly. I'd like to be about keeping your beacons alive and keeping you guys doing the creative things because I like reading and seeing the creative things. So keep that up. This is episode 18 of the series, and today we'll be discussing world building, but in particular, we'll be discussing the idea of cultural events. So, cultural events are, as we would know them, things like Christmas or uh, the Super Bowl, for example, and concerts, and even just like all the way down to the micro scale of going to a club with your friends or going to college. These are events in either one's life or in the culture. And so part of building realistic worlds that are engaging to the reader and something the reader wants to engage with is building systems that resemble ours in any semblance of way, because there are examples of out there fiction that has done numbers that don't look like our world, but I think you if you dug down into it and actually read closely in between the lines, maybe you'd find the humanity in even the most outlandish of works. So that's the plan for today, is to talk about the culture of our worlds that we've created and of worlds that we've studied in our research material, as it were, and help you, the listener, understand how you can bring about a lively, realistic, and engaging culture for your readers. And if you're not a writer, then for your viewers. So, thank you for joining me. And as a quick business addendum, I am publishing The Shards of Arthur's Shield, which is a fantasy sword and sorcery kind of novel here on May 22nd. It will be released. However, currently, if you're listening to this live, this is the final weekend that you can support it on Kickstarter, which is linked in my biography here on X. And doing so gets you a shout out during the podcast. And so I'm going to take care of that real quick because every week so far I've had more new names and more people to talk about in the shout out, which is awesome. And I'm very thankful for that. So I'm going to run through their names really quick and then we'll proceed with the show. Thank you to Richard Jordan, Tim W. Brown, David Jones, Isapo, Adams, Eric Bergstrom, Matt Krell, Matthew L. Martin, Wendy, Mike, Chani Hawkinson, Trinity Cunningham, Richard, Kimberly Carson, Sue Lamberson, Captain Bojangles, Amber Davis, Don Davis, Yamato, Harry, Merg, Isle, Jason Wells, Aaron Davies, Greg Cooper, Tony Garcia, Mista Mac, Mark Evanson, Elliot Kleinschmidt, and Trombley Tibble. It's a lot of names, and I am honored to be able to read them to you all. And I mean, I'm aghast at how successful this Kickstarter has been, and I thank you all for your kind support, and I hope you especially you, if you're pledged to the Kickstarter, really enjoy this episode because I'm partially able to do it because of you. So thank you. All right. So getting back into the show a little bit, I have some guests here with me today to discuss cultural events in stories, either stories they've read or stories they are writing themselves. And I'm quite interested to hear all about it. But before that, let's get a feel for who they are and have them introduce themselves. So if you'd like to start, please introduce yourself, Mr. Goodwin.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Abe. I'm J.M. Goodwin, the author of The Isles Called Strife, my debut epic fantasy novel. Working on the second one now. Really, just wanted to come here and talk about some of the things I think we can learn as authors from other people in the past, great things they've done, and how that really helps your readers feel like this is a real place with real people in it.
For sure. And Stacy, go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
I'm Secret Stacy. I am an artist, author, and entrepreneur from Central Arkansas. My debut novel is Bet Donovan and the Battle for Wyoming. It is an action adventure, modernized Western, kind of in the vein of like Guy Ritchie meets the family dynamic of, or the chosen family dynamic of the Ocean's movies. And so it's a really fun time if you haven't checked that out. Bet Donovan and the Battle for Wyoming. I have a romantic suspense novel coming out later this year called Life in the Quiet. So look for that too.
Very cool. Yeah, it's great to have you guys on. You guys have both been on the show before, and I'm excited to uh, keep going with you guys and talk about more cool things. So I wanted to start off by um, kind of um, opening the floor up a little bit with a more focused question on the topic. And we'll start with Secret this time, if you don't mind. How would you define for your writing, like, for example, like, how would you define those cultural events? Like, what does the word cultural or the term cultural event mean in the terms of your story?
I guess it completely depends on what story I'm working on. So in Bet Donovan, I went through and chose a lot of historical events that people I knew would recognize without having to Google them, right? Things that
Mm,
that people would just know and characters that they would know. And then I worked her into the story to sort of move these events into place. And so that was very research heavy, and traditionally research heavy. Life in the Quiet, it is set place in modern day. And so that's where, more like you were talking about, your cultural events are when they are out hanging out with their friends, having drinks, or they're at basketball games, watching their kids play, and things like that. In that story, of course, you just pull more from your own experiences. You pull from TV shows, from the news, but by and large, I think that probably your own experiences, or that's your biggest knowledge base, right? Of modern cultural events, or the things that you've experienced. And so that's probably sort of how those two things differentiate the historic fiction versus kind of a more modern story.
totally. And I mean, I guess it depends on where you're giving emphasis, right? So, like, I'm guessing in the battle for Wyoming, they still have some semblance of American culture, like the Christian culture that built the West, which is things like Christmas or Easter. But that those ideas and those events might not have been as prevalent in those stories. It's all just kind of depends on what you decide as the author is necessary to tell the best story, right?
Yeah, and I'm real funny about timelines in the stories that I write um, because I map everything out. And so, if 4 months goes by, then something, what happened during those 4 months? Was that
Mm-hmm.
over the winter, or was that over Thanksgiving? And so I do always make sure to plug those major sort of holiday events and that kind of thing, or the seasons in. I don't like the blank space of just an abstract, time.
Right. I'm sure that's definitely appreciated by your readers. It for me, things like that help me connect with the characters. They seem more like people. Uh, I think of one of the books that got me into fantasy writing and reading, which was Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Lightning Thief. That's the first one. I've read the whole series, obviously, but in the first one, especially with what you talked about, they he experiences Percy Jackson, that being, experiences a whole new culture and has to experience new cultural events like capture the flag in the woods and these different fantastical features of being or being a new addition to a fantastical realm. And even then, in that book, I'm guessing like with Bet Donovan, there's travel time, and the travel time isn't just used as kind of like, Indiana Jones, it zooms out and then there's a plane flying across the screen. It's more detailed than that. We get character work, we get we get better characters for it. He skips some things sometimes, and like I do in mine, like in my own work, you don't see every single second of every single day. There's some things are just, you just kind of skip over it. It's like and I hate to even bring it up, but in the new show, The Night of Seven Kingdoms by HBO, with I guess it's a Game of Thrones spinoff. They do some things in the first two episodes that are just entirely unnecessary and take away, I would even say, from the quality of the work. And so be careful that you don't overwhelm your reader with unnecessary and even grotesque details, right? Just
Right.
be super careful with that, but also mm, give your characters or give your readers enough to latch on to these people and you know feel them as real people, not just you know distanced characters that you can't relate to, because in reality they are still human. So good, thanks for sharing. And then Mr. Goodwin, how about yourself? When you find yourself writing or reading about other cultures, what usually stands out as sort of defining itself as a culture or a cultural event?
I think there's an argument to be made that anything that isn't directly connected to the plot is a cultural event. The
Hmm.
things that people do in their daily life, that is an indication of who they are, the society they come from, the kind of things they do. So if you're even if you're just explaining how somebody eats food, they sit down with the rest of the characters in your story, their family, they have a meal. Okay, you've established that as a thing that these people do.
Hmm.
They actually have, what's this is the kind of food they eat. They have families that they spend time with. Not every culture does that the same way. So I think it's unfortunate that many stories just kind of gloss over that as we ate dinner. Okay, well, how?
Right.
That is an opportunity for you to have told us something about this world. What do people sit on the floor? Do they all use tables? What kind of things are they eating? What kind of utensils do they use? And that would be one sentence to describe that, but by doing that you've added more to this world. So anytime an author sits down and really does that and makes an effort to point out how what how the place their characters inhabit is slightly different from what we would assume, that's some degree of culture that they're inventing, and it's kind of a shame, I think, that many people don't do that. Not every story has to have it. You could be writing a kind of story where it's all about the events and not so much about the characters. But if you're going to make a character story that isn't set in modern day America, it would, benefit you to really, just spend a little bit of time, even if it ends up being only 10, 12 sentences in your whole book talking about it, because even that is something that the reader can latch onto.
I absolutely agree. And I like, honestly, that you brought that up. Anything is culture, right? Everything is culture. They say insert thing here is downstream of culture, be that politics or religion or whatever. But in reality, I think the many systems in any world are kind of like water is in that very accurate um turn of phrase. They say politics is downstream of culture, or culture is downstream of politics, or whatever. That's just the one that I can think of as an example. But water is the thing being used. It's the subject. A stream is, if you think of water. And I think everything in a world is kind of like water, because if you understand how the water works on Earth, it's a closed system. There is not more water, or there's no more water, and there's no less water today on Earth than there was when Christ walked the earth. There's the exact same amount of water. It might be in different places. Some of it might be underground, some of it might be above ground, whatever. But there's the exact same amount of water. And so, that being said, one of the things we learn in middle school geology, or one of those sciences, is
Earth
that
sciences, yeah.
Earth sciences, exactly. Water is a system that so it condenses from the clouds, falls to the earth, it goes into the ground or into the rivers or into the ocean, and then the sun evaporates it back up into the clouds. And so, using these sort of as an example, we can look at culture, politics, religion, society, everything pretty much in your fantastical world. I'm not even talking about our real world, which I think it would also hold true to, but in your fantastical world, everything affects everything else. And so, the political leaders of a nation, the king, might affect a cultural aspect of life. To use a real world example, we in the musical arts, because I am a musical artist as well, there is a cultural expectation that if you are listening to the oratorio called Messiah, or Handel's Messiah, when the people performing it, or if you're in a sing-in, which is really fun if you guys haven't been, you can find a sing-in where the congregation gets to sing along with the artists. It's fantastic. But whoever's singing the oratorio, when we get to the song towards the end called the Hallelujah Chorus, everyone in the audience stands up. No one's allowed to be seated during the Hallelujah Chorus in an official rendition of the oratorio. Obviously, if you're listening to it on the radio or something, you're not going to stand up. It's whatever. But if you're there officially listening to the oratorio in a traditional capacity, you're expected to stand up, because a political leader 500 years ago decided that he would stand up when that song started playing. And that being King Henry VIII, I believe it was. And so now that's just what you do. It's the same reason, unless you have a specific kind of suit as a man, you don't button the bottom button on your suit, because King Henry VIII couldn't, because he was fat. And so, think about these things, and I'm kind of rambling here, but it's my show, so I'm going to ramble. Think about these things when you're creating your worlds, dear listeners. How do the small, forget 'em moments, as I'll call them, forget them moments, affect the culture downstream? And then how will those eventually wrap around to being, or to affecting the next forget 'em moment, which becomes a new linchpin in the culture? And there's tons of examples from real life, from fiction, uh, in my own work, the Shards of Arthur's Shield. The culture of the city where the main character comes from, it's called the town of Alnwick, is that Fae might exist, might not exist. They're mostly just stories, because Fae have stopped visiting the town of Alnwick. But the main character learns, about 2/3 of the way through the book, that, oh, no, Fae are very real, and Fae are very active in this other town, in this other culture. And so, what's the difference? And he learns that there was an event that happened 400 years prior to the story taking place that caused a cultural shift among the Fae. So now the Fae decidedly avoid the town of Alnwick. And so that culture has been affected by something else that happened previously, and so that thing that happened previously will have a domino effect, that now the people of Alnwick are kind of mistrusting of Fae, or just don't believe that Fae even exist, because they don't see them anymore, because of something that happened 400 years ago. And so it kind of builds on itself and snowballs into other effects down the line. And now, do you have to know all of that when you're first setting down to write your book? No. But should you think about some of these things and how to connect them? Yes. Because if you aren't asking yourself why when you create a piece of culture for your story, then let me ask you, why is it in the book? Like, who cares? Like the reason Excalibur, for example, even though I think it might be named once, but it's very rarely named in my book. The reason Excalibur is in the book, however, is because Excalibur is Arthur's sword. There's a very clear why that it's there in the book. And same with the shield. Why are we hunting the shards of Arthur's shield, as the title would suggest? Because the why is that's Arthur's shield. It's very important. I mean, and you learn as the reader, you learn a greater why. If you read through the book, you come to understand that it's more than just Arthur's shield. It means something more now. There's new prophecies, there's new ideas around it. But eh, that's kind of my rant is if you can't answer why, then it might not be necessary.
So I don't disagree with anything you just said. You're absolutely
Sure.
right. But I do want to point a counter example. I think I was going to bring this up later down the line is perhaps the best example of a cultural event, and you specifically called out sporting events earlier.
Hmm.
I think the best example we have in fiction is Quidditch,
Right.
and it's the most famous one. We all know Quidditch. I don't know if you've ever seen people playing Quidditch in real life. I have. It's
I've
very
not.
wild. It's a very strange experience.
I've
But
not.
no, this is it. This is so cool, like influential of a fake thing that people do it in real life.
Hmm.
And when you look at the Harry Potter books, Quidditch, the game, has almost no effect on the story. Like
Mm.
not until certainly not in the first few books. You're later in the books with the Quidditch World Cup, that's a major event. But every other time Quidditch shows up, and it shows up multiple times in every event, it's just an excuse to move the plot along. It's an excuse
Mm.
for something to interrupt the game. But a significant amount of page space is training for the game and actually describing what's happening and who wins and the drama. And it's all irrelevant to the plot beyond the stuff that comes in from outside and interrupts the game in the various books. And
Mm.
yet, Rowling puts all this influence into it and puts a lot of effort into writing it, and it's real and feels cool enough that people try to play it, even though when you think about the rules, it's total nonsense, right? So I think it's really interesting to consider, and I agree. Again, I completely agree with what you're saying. Is thinking about how all these effects play into each other, and your
Hmm.
larger story and the world itself is great, but also at the same time you can just have a very cool cultural event that fits the vibe and tells you something about the characters and is an excuse to move the plot along and have it make absolutely no sense. I didn't realize how little sense Quidditch made when I was reading those books. It was only till way later when somebody on the internet went, think about these rules for a second, and I went, oh yeah,
Huh.
no, that actually makes no sense. This would not be an entertaining game to watch at all. But you're in the story. It fits the vibe. It fits the way the character is. You don't notice it. So there, you can do both, is what I'm trying to say.
100%. I mean, I think as a Christian author, I think the easiest thing for me to pick on there is in my book, my character goes to mass. In fact, I think there's 3 scenes where he attends mass or does something else important inside of a chapel or church building, and like it's kind of just like for the agnostic or perhaps the atheist reader, that's kind of a just kind of a shrug. Like, why is he in there? Like, can't the plot move along without this scene? Maybe. In fact, there's nothing plot crucial that occurs in any 3 of those scenes, but the why is still answered. The why is still, well, because it helps build up who Thomas is as a character. It helps build up that he's a man of faith, and so when he comes to a faith crisis later in the book, it means something. It's more impactful because you as a reader understand, oh, even if I don't accept this faith, even if I don't understand this character is still having a crisis of faith. I can still empathize with what he's going through, even if I don't believe or understand it. And same thing with with Quidditch, or I'll even use myself and a real life example: soccer. I don't understand soccer, and I think Quidditch was kind of based on football, as it were, and but I can still understand the cultural importance of it. I can still see the why, and like I'll watch clips if they show up. Like I'm not bored by the concept. It's just not. It doesn't hold any relevance for me. I don't. It's not part of. Maybe that's what it is. And this could be a thing with Quidditch too. It's not part of our culture, but it's an important part of the culture in the book that we're talking about. So like in Harry Potter, Quidditch is a culturally it's an almost a cultural necessity is my understanding because it gives them something to do. It's basically their PE activity, like it's helping. It also in a way helps humanize Hogwarts to the reader, because oh well, I went to high school or I went to middle school and we had mandatory sports that we had to play. Okay, cool. I mean, so this is just a wizarding school, which is what Hogwarts is, but it's a school in every sense. They have sports, they have classmate drama, they have teachers they don't like, there's in every way in every way it becomes a school, and by including an activity like Quidditch, it just becomes a school in yet another way, and
Yeah.
it maintains the distance because it's a fantastical sport, but it's still okay, it's a sport. Cool. We had sports when I was in high school. That makes sense.
Yeah,
So
remove the Quidditch chapters from the Harry Potter books, and the world feels way more stale because there's
yeah,
just you're right. It's a school. It's a high school. It has to have sports. This Wizard World has to have their own wizard sport. They can't just watch soccer like
right.
everybody else
That'd be
does in
boring.
the UK. It'd be boring. It would be non-fantastical. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna have a world that's as fantastic as the Wizarding world. You have to have a sport that's just totally out there
Right.
to match it.
And like, yes, no, I agree. That is a sequitur that I will get into later if we have time. But uh, moving on from
We've left
that,
Stacy out for way too long.
we have. So I am gonna skip to her for the next
That's all right. I don't
questions.
know if y'all saw it, but all my kids just came home.
So, all right, we've talked a little bit or a lot of it about cultural events and what that even means. But Stacy, if you're interested, like, and you might have given us a bit, but can you give us any like concrete examples of cultural events that happen in either of your stories that are maybe like we were just talking about with Quidditch, important to the story or important to the culture, but not necessarily important to the plot or necessary for the plot in the largest way?
Yeah, so in Life in the Quiet, kind of like Arthur, the characters go to church every Sunday. They have a big Sunday lunch gathering after church every Sunday that they kind of go to, and that's their family, like kind of just their family time, their
Mm-hmm.
family tradition or whatever. And so that's probably like the most regular sort of thing like that, like just daily. Of course, they go to basketball games. They go to Chick-fil-A. They
Awesome.
go to some different
As
art
they should.
museums and things like that. But it's probably like the most regular cultural thing is the church on Sunday thing. Um, but Donovan has more of like it touches on, because it's historical fiction and it's very political, and so its events are very like the Vanderbilts trying to build the railways all the way through, from East West America,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. It's bigger cultural events that happened when the U.S. Marshals sort of sent their first contingency of people over to California. Like, there's like some bigger cultural things that sort of happen, but they're more political events, I guess, because that the plot line of that book is very political.
But
And they
there's
do have
still
Christmas and things like that, but
okay.
they celebrate Christmas. They have weddings. So there's still sort of some of that regular everyday stuff, as well.
Absolutely, that's cool. And I mean, again, I think the main purpose behind including these things is to help your readers feel
To
uh,
reinforce in their minds that these are real people.
yes, thank you, that's
Yeah,
concisely.
and I think that's extra. That's doubly important when you're writing a story set in the modern day, or modern day-ish. Do I have that right, Stacey? It's modern day-ish.
Yeah. So Life in the Quiet is modern. Is modern.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So this is something I think I kind of mentioned this earlier. Something I think a lot of writers do wrong is when they're writing a modern day story, they just kind of like hand wave that you assume their characters are doing the modern day things without specifically stating, so and so goes to a wedding, so and so celebrates Christmas or Easter, or they're driving down the street and there's kids doing Halloween all over the place. You you have to mention these things so it reminds the authors, oh, this is a real place. This is a real place with real people in it doing real people things
Hmm.
that you and I would understand because otherwise, the reader isn't going to hear that it's fall out and go, oh, so there must be Halloween decorations. You have to tell them there's Halloween decorations.
100%.
Otherwise, they're just, the character's just walking around in a fog. So, very glad to hear that you're including that sort of thing because it really is necessary.
It's important in modern stories, but I think not. I wouldn't say more so. I do agree that it is crucial in modern stories because in fantastical settings, it's much more natural to include those smaller details because it's a totally different world, and nobody from our world would assume anything. As a writer writing a contemporary story, you might think people will assume, oh well, I told them it's December, so of course they're going to imagine Christmas decorations here. But if you're writing a fantastical setting and you say, well, I told them it's the month of Quinthar, so of course they'd expect floor gash decorations here. Like, but no, they wouldn't. Like that doesn't make any sense. What the heck even is floor gash? What? I just pulled that right out of my mind. But like it it's a lot more natural, even though you're writing an unnatural story. It's a lot more natural in a fantasy setting to tell them those smaller details. I think a great example of this. This is your weekly intermission for the Wheel of Time show. But in the Wheel of Time, which I'm currently rereading for purposes, uh, there's a great cultural thing that happens in the very first book, which is based on, well, vaguely based on our world with different human traditions, but they're having Winter Night, which is a midwinter celebration of, hey, we've survived half the winter, pretty much, and um, and so they do a whole bunch of cultural things in the first few chapters to help humanize these villagers before he kills a dozen of them or whatever, and it works really well. I think it's a great opening act to a story because uh it helps you helps you connect with these characters and relate to your own experiences, and then when it's taken away from them and when the inciting incident occurs, it's much more heart-wrenching for the reader, like, oh man, they were supposed to do this or that
Hmm.
and they didn't get to. And so, and for some readers, they think, oh well, I can remember what happened when I didn't get to go to my prom, or when I didn't get to go to that Christmas party or this event. It, like we've been saying, it humanizes them. And um there's a small detail that Jordan puts in the world as sort of a cultural thing that isn't explained, really. I mean, it's sort of mentioned and given a couple ideas thrown at it, but it's not really explained why it's there. When someone brands the innkeeper's door with the dragon's talon, it's a
Hmm.
strong cultural symbol of, we don't like you anymore, and like, you better get out of Dodge is the implication. And until the wizard character Moraine steps in and basically tells him what for, it was going downhill fast. But that cultural icon was the sort of, now if you've read the series and are going back to reread it, that icon on the door is kind of a first implication that, oh no, this is serious, like the things are bad, and people are
Hmm.
accusing they basically accused their mayor of being a dark friend, which is like saying someone is using witchcraft in the 1700s. Like, it's crazy stuff. But
I'm very glad you brought up Wheel of Time because I was going to do this myself. So thank you. If you'll
naturally,
permit me, can I ask you and Stacy a question?
oh well, that's a first, but absolutely.
Can I turn the tables a little here? Okay, Stacy,
Uh
have you read Wheel of Time? Because that will determine how you can answer this question.
oh.
I have not read Wheel of Time. I have read the first chapter of it, and
Ah,
It's one of the
I bought
best.
it, and I read the epilogue in the first chapter, and that's as far as I've gotten.
The
I'll tell you
epilogue or
this.
the prologue?
I mean the prologue. I'm sorry,
Okay, you're
the
fine.
prologue in the first chapter. Um, I'll tell you this. I am really weird about time travel as just as a story. I think it's because of the X-Men and
Mm,
Tales of Future Past, Days of Future Past.
oh,
We watched all
mhm,
those movies and then none of it meant anything. And so
yes.
I've been burned now, and I'm real apprehensive about getting into a huge time travel story. So that's kind of been why I've like waffled on it.
so just to clarify real quick, Mr. Goodwin, and for your sake as well, Secret, be not afraid, for there is no time travel. There are time warping stories that happen in like book 3 or book 4, but none of the characters actually travel through time. It
I
is
think the big
a
time travel is
Renaissance
in book two,
fantasy.
actually.
Is it? Well,
Yeah.
I guess no. I guess
Does it?
no.
Yeah.
It's dimension hopping is what happens in book 2.
Remember, like 8 months go by though, and all of a sudden they're at Flama, and it's fall, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's been like or however many months
They
it has
do
been.
jump to the future. Yeah,
Yeah,
he does skip
But
eight
their
months.
but it's not
actions
relevant to the
aren't
plot. Yeah.
negated
No,
by
no,
the
their actions
concept.
still take place, and they're very much important. And their disappearance for 8 months also has snowballing
Yeah,
effects. So
it does. Yeah.
yeah, it's a
So
great series. Trust, it's worth
I
it.
guess I
Okay,
won't.
I might put
I
it
will.
on
I will.
after my what I've got reading right now.
Okay.
I will hold my question then for another time since
Oh
you have Stacy
shucks.
hasn't read it and I don't want to cut her out of the conversation again. She wouldn't have any inputs. That would be mean. So carry
No.
on, sir.
Yeah, I know. That's fair. I appreciate that. That's chivalrous. So when you guys are developing the societies, I mean, for you, Secret, it seems like it's kind of easy because you're able to just sort of look around. Like for your contemporary stuff, you can just look around and sort of see what's going on and pull from your own experiences and kind of make your own stuff. But um, have you guys ever written something from a cultural perspective that you don't hold, and so you had to go and research that culture to more appropriately portray the cultural event? And Goodwin, we'll open with you on this one.
I don't think I have actually. I have
Mm,
certainly like done a lot of research into different cultural things, but I don't think I've ever written something so totally outlandish to my own experience. Like say, the Aiel from Wheel of Time would be
right.
an example of I've never actually really been to a desert, never mind lived in one. Um, as an Arizonan, I'm sure that's very different from where I am. But I have definitely written my characters engaging uh, in activities that I would never do in
Mm.
a cultural way. So like right now, I'm writing the sequel to my to the Isles called Strife, and there is a festival in which the main characters all sing and dance. And unlike you, I am not at all musical. I do not. I sing in church when no one else can hear me. I
Mm.
would never dance in front of other people. So it's kind of like, all right, what does this actually look like? I think I rewatched some clips from the most recent Pride and Prejudice movie of the dance scenes, even though that's not the correct time at all. Just 'cause I think that's not the correct period at all. It's not the vibe I'm going for. I just think those are very well made. Those are very well shot. They're excellently choreographed, and it's normal people doing normal people things, not waltzing, which is like the situation in which my character is. So absolutely, yeah. I think you would have to if it's something you couldn't describe yourself or haven't watched enough to be able to describe someone else doing, you have to do some research to go find out what that looks like so you can put it in the minds of people who have actually sung and danced and are going to know if you're just BSing your way through this story, and that would take them out of what you're trying
Mhm.
to tell them.
Oh yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Is if you haven't done it yourself, you need to figure out how it's done so you can write it better. Because I actually had that experience with the few jousting scenes that I have in the Shards of Arthur's Shield. I've been to the
Mm.
Renaissance Fair a couple times, and so like I've seen jousts occur, and I know the beats, right? I know that they parade their horses and they get in line, they get their lances. I know the beats and bits, but I had to rewatch several uh, jousts on YouTube to sort of familiarize myself with those more fantastical elements. You know, what happens when the shield is broken and when the lance is shattered, and I think I did a pretty good job of it. But um, what about you, Secret? When you're writing these characters, do you have any characters? I mean, Bet Donovan obviously because it's a different time, but perhaps in this new one, do you have any characters who are culturally separate from you or like distant from you that you had to go and sort of research and figure out what they do?
Well, the main character, Sunny, is she has suffered with depression and anxiety and sort of has a lot of mental health issues. And so I did kind of have to do some research into that. I don't deal with the mental health problems myself, but I do have some very close family members that have struggled with it. And so
Mm-hmm.
I do have some experience, with that as far as that's concerned, just my personal knowledge base. But I had to do a lot of research online for that also. For Bet Donovan, you know, of course, I don't know what it's like to live without electricity. And so the big thing there, because I wanted it to be a little more modernized, and I took a lot from my dad's experience. And I talked to him a whole lot about it because he grew up like the boxcar children, and he lived in a house that his dad built with his bare hands out of 2x4s that he skived from the lumber mill and stacked them up sideways on each other like Lincoln logs. And they did not have indoor plumbing, and they did not have electricity, and they did not have any floors. They had dirt floors and peat crates for cabinets. And all of his siblings slept in the same bed. And and this was not like in the Great Depression. This was like in the 1960s. And so that sort of juxtaposition of the modern man living in a very non-modern world became a lot of the inspiration for like that vibe of Bet Donovan. But a lot of the I did lots of research too online and read lots of books, but a lot of the feel of sort of that modern versus old world came from the direct like stories that my dad told me.
Yeah, I could see that, and that's a great resource to call on. So cool. I'm glad you did. Okay. This kind of goes for both of you guys. So I'll start with Secret on this one again. When you were writing either Bet Donovan or this new one, I think is it Life in the Quiet? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Life
Okay.
in Quiet.
When you were writing that, or Bet Donovan, did this is kind of just a curiosity of my own? Did you ever come up with not necessarily wholesale new words like I have, but just new uses of words or new terms that make perfect sense to your characters and are like, "Yep, that's what that is." And if so, did you as the author decide to explain it to the reader, or did you just kind of like, "Yep, that's what it is, reader. So, enjoy that. It's cultural, reader."
Yes and no, not really, but I do have a character in Bet Donovan who is like an Irish gypsy, and he's completely unintelligible the whole book. And it
Awesome.
became like a joke to make his speech, more and more outlandish sort of as I went on with my writing process. And so there are lots of made up words that he says, and they are never explained. They're
That's just
Bet
good.
actually Bet can understand him, and she translates most of the time. But a lot of the made up words she doesn't. She glosses over those.
We love a classic R2D2 archetype.
Yeah.
Never hurt anybody.
Yes.
All right. And then what about you, Mr. Goodwin? Have you ever come up with words or phrases that you just kind of went with the vibe, like you liked the vibe, but you didn't really explain to the reader?
Not yet. I have in some of my other unpublished works, which maybe
Mm-hmm.
one day will see the light of day, but not in Isles Called Strife. That's not the kind of story I'm trying to tell. Currently, I'm going for the, feels very familiar fantasy, and once you start inventing lots of new words, it stops feeling familiar, and it's more new and inventive kind of fantasy, which is great. Nothing wrong with it. Just not something I'm doing here.
Sure.
So I think that's something you have to do if you're writing a sci-fi. If you're writing a sci-fi and you don't make up any new words, well, then you've done it wrong, in my opinion.
100%. You
But
kidding me?
yeah, and I'm very much on, and I intend to write one of those one day, eventually. But I'm very much on the Heinlein side of things, where he just tells you the story as though you know what's going on,
Yep.
and gives you enough context clues that you figure it out. That feels so much more natural, and it really makes the world feel more alive. It really puts the reader in tune with the story better when done properly. I was just gonna say, on a similar vein, I do have a character that speaks in a deliberately ridiculous and exaggerated piratical accent. So there are some made up words in there, but they're all supposed to be relatively intelligible.
Nice. Yeah, I got for this one. I mean, really, I'm just using Latin for this. Like, I know most of my readers going into it will know no Latin, and coming out of it, they might know one word of Latin, that being Rex, because Rex is used constantly in the story. But I mean, who doesn't know what king means? But uh,
We read Harry Potter. We know Latin.
well, yeah,
A little bit.
this is Christian Latin, okay? This isn't that pagan nonsense that I have sitting on my shelf right there. But don't worry about it. Uh, but no, so it is like I do use a lot of Christian Latin. You know, I use things like Occidentis, which means the West, and I use um Han Clement, which means hand that claims. And so there's a lot of fun usage of Latin. I do have a series that I plan on writing at some point, which includes the word thrice. I do like how the word thrice sounds, and it is a real word, but every time it comes up in the story, it's capitalized. It's capitalized T, and it's in the context of food. But it's never explained. It's just, oh yeah, it's thrice. We love thrice. Like, you want some extra thrice on your plate, bro? Like, yeah, I love thrice, man. And it's never explained. Like, in none of my outlines and none of my short fictions that I've written in that world so far have I ever delved into the cultural complexities of that which is thrice. But it's always a food because naturally I'm an American Baptist. You know, inventing foods is
Key to
it's
our culture. Yeah.
part of my religion, as the
Yes.
Mandalorian might say. So, cool. This was a quick and fun episode, I guess. But we're gonna wrap things up. Once again, if you're listening and wish to support, go ahead and click the link in my bio and go support the Kickstarter. It's well worth it. You get a signed copy for only $15, which I can tell you right now is going to be way, way cheaper than a plain non-signed copy on Amazon is going to be, because I just did all that stuff on Amazon today. So definitely go get yours today, for way cheaper on the Kickstarter. It's worth it. But if you're listening to this after the fact and you missed the Kickstarter, which is fine, the book is available for pre-order on Amazon. That will be linked below in the description. Um, and before we sign off, obviously I want to give my friends here a chance to tell you where you can go and support them and find their materials, buy their books. And we'll start ladies first. So Secret, if you don't mind starting us off here, where can people find you? Where can people go buy your books? And
Bet Donovan and the Battle for Wyoming is available on Amazon. Black in the Quiet coming out later this year. It will also be available on Amazon hardback and paperback and ebook. You can also buy signed copies from my website, www.srstacy.com, and they are curated very cute. You guys want them? They're so cute. Um,
Awesome.
actually, it's not a good like guy sales, but they're cute for guys too. I promise.
I actually
Um,
have several moms who watch my show, so you're fine.
Wives and
okay,
girlfriends too. Come on.
Yeah, that fair enough. That too.
Yeah.
they're great. I'm on Twitter at Secret Coran. I'm on Facebook, Secret Stacy, and I'm on Instagram at Secret Coran Stacy. So you guys look me up there and go check out Bet Donovan.
Yep, and I'll make sure to close caption that one. It's Secret Coran, like Coran, not Quran. So don't start googling the wrong things, my friends. Keep it on the straight and narrow. And Mr. Goodwin, please, if you wouldn't mind letting people know where they can find you, where they can buy your debut novel, and where they can follow you.
Absolutely. My fantasy series will be on Amazon, um, both paperback, ebook, and Kindle Unlimited. Again, The Isles Called Strife is the first book, hoping to have the second one out by the end of the year.
Very cool.
And you can follow me on X at JM Goodwin. JMG Author, I believe, is my handle
I believe it
for
is.
some more controversial writing takes, particularly about the Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned indeed, my friends. All of their links and their access will be in the description below. If they've intrigued you, mine will be as well. Go follow them. Go buy their books. Go pre-order my book on Amazon. And as you go about your week, remember, keep the beacon lit.